that kind of day, I guess. Uh, so I know where I know where these little kids get it now on the Sunday evening when we Bible booster. uh, it's good to be here. Missed being here last week, and I appreciate so much. I know the elders have the understanding, and I'm not. Who filled in for me? Who filled in for me? Anybody know?
Right there.
Rick did. Okay. Well, appreciate so much in doing that, and sometimes things come up that require your attention, and so we took care of things, and we were just very anxious to get up there about this time last week. It turned out much better than what we had feared, and it's going pretty good. By the way, I just want to say this because I don't know if it'll be Sunday, James will be here, but maybe a week or two. But what is going on with him has nothing to do with where he went. In fact, he's going to be going back to Lehigh. He's pretty committed to that. It's something that he's dealing with that is probably good that he finds out what it is now instead of later. And I think we're already on the road, and so he will, from a parent standpoint, we're going to get to have him next semester. He's going to take a semester off before he goes back. And so we look forward to having him around. And but it's going to be good. And we have a great appreciation for things that some people go through. And some things that I have to confess I was ignorant on that, the whole umbrella of what they call mental illness is such a thing that it's sad because no one's allowed to talk about it. It's like people are afraid there's such a stigma to it, and so as a result, people I think sometimes go. I know my mom has suffered with things most of her life because it just was a taboo back in the day. If you admitted to anything, you were crazy or something, and so as a result, you just suffered it. And so I think things are getting better, but there's still a little bit of stigma, and so. But just keep prayers for James as he, he's doing well, but that continues that process. Anything else we need to make mention of tonight that I would ask that you keep the Lord really doesn't care about football games, but I would ask that you keep in prayers all those that's going to be traveling to Little Rock and traveling back. The weather is very iffy right now, and I would pray that it is such that it's not such that there'll be any accidents or anything severe like that, and so many things people will be safe. Anything we need to make mention of? Huh? Widowers, yeah, of course, I'm sure that'll be announced a little later again, but I saw the sign-up sheet still out there, so I don't know, I don't guess it's too late yet. It's this Sunday, yes, but I'm saying they'll probably take it up tonight, so if you have not yet signed that, you need to really put it on there, and do so much appreciate the hospitality and the generosity that the Reeds show to the whole community at large, but especially to the church family here. And they've opened up to anyone, which they've always done that, but they've said that it's no one has to worry about the cost this year, and that is very generous and more than it's just very appreciated. It's not it wasn't asked for, it wasn't requested, but yet we do appreciate it. Anything else?
Mom, with her dental procedures, we'll be able to sit on mine, so it's not going to be an easy with some procedures, so.
So they're doing it in stages like we thought. Yeah, yeah, Haley's mom's been through a lot this last couple of years, but it's kind of one of those things, the things she's haven't done are things that should make her quality of life much better for a long period of time, so, she's having some dental stuff done that, takes several weeks to get done, and, it's not a pleasant process. It can be very painful at first, and so, keep Haley's mom in your prayers. Anything else we need to mention? Well, God, let's have a prayer, and then we'll begin our class. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity we gather together. We appreciate all those here. It is such a family. Lord, may we understand that we are here for each other. We appreciate it when people say prayers for us and prayers for one another. We ask that you be with all those that are on the sick list, on the prayer list. Help them as we do have many that are on that. We ask that you be with so many endeavors by many of our members. We are so blessed by their efforts of generosity. We pray that you be with Haley's mom as she continues to have procedures. Be with so many of our number and so many this time of year that are hurting in some form or fashion. And Lord, may they always turn to you. In Christ's name we pray. We've been looking at the kings, and we're kind of getting into a king that you could study for years, I guess, because there's so much there. And it's really remarkable. One of the things that to me really shows the fact that the Bible is inspired is our heroes of faith, the ones that we look up to. David is said to be a man after God's own heart. But yet, David's flaws are pointed out. They're left bare. It's there for all to see. It's recorded. And if you think about it, if you're recording someone that you had looked to as a hero, as whatever, what do you tend to do? You tend to only write the really good things. How many of y'all have watched any of the George H.W. Bush funeral things going on? A lot of things that could be said about that. Now, one thing that, wouldn't it be nice, have you noticed that during this process, the news has just been recording the news? They've left out all the other stuff they kind of tend to get into, and it's just been new. And have you noticed how many good things are said about George H.W. Bush? And from all known, he was a very good man, had a lot that he did in his life. But if you look back far enough, you can see some of these people that are praising him now, some of the mean things they used to say about him 20 years ago. And some things that they, used to think about him and other things. And it's just interesting how that tends to happen. And typically when we see someone that, was a fairly, dignitary of some type, when they pass away, typically it is. We talk about the good things. I remember back, and we do that with our presidents. I remember when Richard Nixon died and was buried. There's many, scandalous things that people always said about him and everything. When he passed, they started talking about his last years of his life and some of the good things, and they humanized him as all of us are, and I thought, well, isn't that interesting? But the truth of the matter is, you look in history books, you can see what people write about. But the thing is, we tend to look at the good things, especially the ones that we really like. Ronald Reagan, a lot of good things were said when he passed away, and once again, I think another good man, but he had his flaws as well. And so we understand that, but we focus on the good. The Bible didn't just focus on the good when it talked about people like Abraham, David, and anyone else that was a man of faith. It did talk about the good, but it talked about the flaws. Why do you think the Bible did that? Why do you think God, through His Spirit, decided to record even the warts of the heroes of faith?
For me, it gives me hope.
Gives you hope. And how does it give you hope?
To realize we're not perfect, and we can't be perfect, and we're gonna make mistakes, and
Yes.
we have to remain faithful, and we have to do our best, and
Even those that God called out as special were not perfect. And if they were called out as special people of faith and godly people, then we, as we know, we stumble and fall. We know that,
still do.
we still do, yes. And we know that, that is the way people are. We all fall short. The only one that didn't was Jesus when he walked this earth. And so, it does. And so, you see, God is always right in what he does. And by the way, you also see through this, it's such a different document than what you see in any other religion. This really goes through there and it records all that. But you see through it, the fact is sometimes it's not that we make mistakes, because we do. But look at how these people responded when they did something wrong. How they turned to God. And I think that's where David shines more than anyone else. Because when he did make a mistake, read Psalm. If you're ever feeling like, man, I've messed up, I tell you, read Psalm 51 and you'll see how you should react about something that you've done right. Well, anyway, we a couple weeks got into some of this, but I'm just going to go through a couple things and just highlight. I think we covered this first section here, where you remember God had separated himself from Saul. Saul had chosen to not obey God and killing all the Amalekites and King Agag himself. And as a result, because he did not obey, the kingdom was removed from his family. Now Saul would still be king for a while. And so here we see Samuel was depressed. He felt rejected. And yet God calls out to him. And tells him, hey, it's time to go. And so what we see here is, Samuel was at first concerned that, which also leads to show you why Saul had so digressed from his initial promise. But God tells him what to do. And you notice in verse 4 it says, Samuel did what the Lord commanded. And I want you to think about this, because we're looking at a man, David, as we'll see, because he's a young man. In fact, maybe he was a teenager at this time. We don't know the exact age, but he was younger than the rest of the sons of Jesse, and he was young. And so we see that David, though, had the heart that was right. Saul was one that looked the part. David was one that had the right heart. But yet, if we want to have a right heart to God, it first comes from doing what God tells us to do, is it not? In fact, how dare we try to say our hearts are for God if we're not doing what God wants us to do? It can't go any other way. So, a lot of times we are led by our hearts. And, you need to use your reasoning at times. But, when we're led by our hearts, a lot of times our heart can override, even sometimes, common sense, I guess. We heard that our son was in need. We got in the car and we drove. And you do that for something you really love, Imagine if people that we all knew, people that we all associated with, they had that same heart for God. That their love for God was such that whatever God told them to do, they did. And here we see Samuel, that even though this may be risky, because if Saul finds this out, he's got the whole army of Israel that he could come down on Samuel. Now, maybe we need to have some faith, and here God was telling him, so Samuel could definitely understand that God had his back. But the point is that Samuel did. And a lot of times we can find excuses why not to do what God says. And people do that all the time. I can't do it now because of this, or whatever. But here we see that Samuel did what God commanded. And so he goes down to the, to where Jesse's at in Bethlehem. And basically he doesn't really tell them what he's there for. And to me, it really is unclear to a degree exactly who really knew during this time exactly what Samuel was there for. Now, you need to understand too that some of this, a lot of commentators are not convinced that as we get into some of this that it was chronological. In other words, some of these events that we're going to see may have happened at different times. And a lot of times the Bible does that. It doesn't necessarily always follow beginning to end chronological order. But what we see here is that we see this snapshot of when Samuel first comes into the house of Jesse. And it's unclear as to whether they understood what was really transpiring. But what we see here is that he wants to see Jesse's children, his sons. And he wants to give one of them a blessing. Now, whether or not they understood that he was actually going to be anointing the next king of Israel, don't know. And don't know who actually may have known that and not known it. But he wants to see these sons presented before him. Now, Samuel would not be making the choice, would he? Who's going to be making the choice? God. Okay. God, just as he chose Saul, he's going to choose the next king. And so in verse 6, it says, when they came, he looked at Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. My guess, this was the oldest, and my guess of Jesse, and my guess, he probably had the look once again. You know, he was probably a chiseled, fighter, a chiseled guy, and had already been somewhat of a leader in his own ranks, and this is the one. The Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees, but man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, think about that. Not everybody is as blessed to be as nice looking as me, And so it is that God doesn't face things that way. And we see on and on. Have you ever paid attention to, TV shows or the movies? How many out of shape, ugly people do you see as lead stars in the movies or TV shows? And how much of it is real world? I mean, how many people you see that's what people in our street are like. We might have a few that you can say, yeah, they kind of have that look, but in general, every person on the show looks like that. How is that possible? Well, it's because they do that on purpose. It's about the look, is it not? And so what we see though with God, it has nothing to do with the look. And because God doesn't care about looks. Now it doesn't mean that you can't be, of good appearance or, attractive or whatever, but that's not what's important with God. And what's important with God is the heart. Well, so Samuel's like, okay, well, see the next one. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass for Samuel, and he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one, Nothing. Then Jesse made Shammah pass by, neither has the Lord chosen this one. And Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, and Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen these. Now, by the way, what order do you think Jesse had these sons appear before? Oldest to the youngest. There's probably a natural process there. Obviously, you're oldest, and so, you think there's a chain that you kind of follow through. And especially, back in this day, the culture really had a affinity for the firstborn child. And so that's the way he did this. Now, they were shepherds, and so they had jobs, but Samuel's like, the Lord's not chosen any of these, what's up? There was still one, wasn't there? And so in verse 11 it says, then Samuel said to Jesse, are all your sons here? And he said, there remains yet the youngest, Behold, he's keeping the sheep. Somebody had to. And Samuel said to Jesse, send and get him, for we will sit down till he comes here. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. So Samuel did his job. And what's interesting is we don't know exactly how long it was from the time that he's anointed to the time he actually becomes king. Because as we're going to see, there is a time of many years that will pass before Saul is no longer king of Israel. But what it says is God has anointed this one to be the next king. Now, when God does something like this, a promise, that's what's going to happen. And we're going to see that Saul tries everything he can to keep this from happening, even though he doesn't know about this. He keeps it from happening out of jealousy, out of anger, out of other reasons. And so he tries to, as we're going to see, he's going to try to kill and even murder David. When God does it, it's going to happen. And even though David was very young at this time, David would be the next king. And so I just think that is something interesting. And it wasn't that David didn't have a good look, as it says. He was handsome, but he was just so young. And he probably was small, at least compared to, obviously, one of his older brothers, and definitely compared to Saul. Saul was head and shoulders over everyone. And so David just wasn't the size that you'd think. You look at, football, you see an offensive lineman, big guy. And generally you think of a skinnier guy, a smaller guy that's going to be a quarterback or wide receiver. But here this little guy would be king. Because in God, it's not the matter of your physical prowess, is it? And so that's what we will see. Now, I find it fascinating, and this is where, like I say, not many commentators do not know, and they just interject. And there's people that speculate which way order this would be, not would be. But, there's really no way to know, so don't worry too much about it. Just know that if you think you don't really see how this could fit flow-wise right, well, it probably didn't go this order. But which one actually occurs first, exactly how much forward, it doesn't really matter. These are different snapshots that take place that depict this early age of David before he would be with the king. And so many people will place this later, that this occurred sometime after. It may not occur immediately after. Verse 14, it says, now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a harmful spirit from the Lord tormented him. Let me go and read this section and we'll talk about that. It says, and Saul's servant said to him, behold, now a harmful spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord now command your servants who are before you to seek out a man who is skillful in playing the lyre. And when the harmful spirit from God is upon you, he will play it, and you will be well. So Saul said to his servants, provide for me a man who can play well, and bring him to me. One of the young men answered, behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, and the Lord is with him. Therefore Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, send me David your son, who is with the sheep. Like I said, there's some things to people there. It makes it seem unclear as to when this may have taken place. But anyway, the people were aware of who David was at this time. But anyway, a harmful spirit. Now, there are some that would contend that, God's Spirit left. Now, there was a moment, if you remember, where God's Spirit came upon Saul, and he did prophesy briefly. But I think there's problems in saying that it was the Spirit in that way. I think, we talk about having a fellowship with God, walking with God, and Saul had departed from God's ways, had he not? And when we depart from way, God departs from us. And so we don't need to look at this as a miraculous way. We think of like, David himself would be inspired and write many scriptures. I don't think that we're talking about that with Saul. I think we're talking about that he's separated from God's eyes separated from him. Now, the point that sometimes commentators go awry and think of this is they talk about the harmful spirit. Well, let's examine this. What was this harmful spirit? Do you have any ideas? Some would contend that Saul was demon possessed. Possessed by demon. Some would contend to say, well, God sent this harmful spirit. Because that's what it says. Of course, in the same light, they'd also contend that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And we need to understand that the way that, especially in the Old Testament, the way that the writers looked at things, God allowed something the same as God doing it, because God is in control over all. So God did not want something to happen, it would not. But Job 121, Job there says, remember after all the bad things happened to him, he said, naked I come from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the Lord. But does the Lord actually take away from us? Or does he allow what goes on to happen? And, one of the big things is, what does James say about, if someone were to try to say that God tempted them? Doesn't happen, does it? James says God don't tempt us. And so what we see is God allows things to happen. And so what was this evil spirit? Well, I think it parallels kind of what Paul writes in 2 Thessalonians 2, 11 through 12, where he says, therefore God sends them a strong delusion, so they may believe what is false, in order that they may be condemned and not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So what do you think this harmful spirit that tormented Saul? By the way, a big indication that we can tell for sure with certainty that this is not a demon that possessed him. How was this harmful spirit put at bay? What did they do? Play the lyre, yeah. A nice little harp thing, yeah. Kind of a mini harp, I guess, kind of a portable one. Yeah. And it soothed him. How many of y'all have been upset, angry, and whatever? Maybe play some music and kind of chill out for a while. And that's what it was. So, basically, I think when we depart from God, we're more prone to fits of anger. We're more prone to be agitated. We're more prone to be unhappy. And the littlest thing gets on to us. And Saul had become a state like that. And I imagine he wasn't a nice guy to be around. You ever been around somebody that, they have a bad side, you just don't want to be around them like that. And so all the servants of Saul said, hey, let's get him some music to kind of soothe this spirit from him. And so really, it's all that is. And so, a demon, we see, that's not how demons were dealt with in the New Testament. Demons were either cast out or they caused harm. Also, Saul was functioning as a king. In the New Testament, when a demon took over a body, it controlled what they could do and not do. Whereas Saul was able to make decisions, do things, he just wasn't a very good guy. And there was something about David in these early stages. David had a way of easing that troubled spirit that Saul had. David had influence on Saul. And it's sad that this wasn't enough for Saul to right his ship. But at least for moments, David would soothe his soul. Now, sometimes we, I think, need something to, some people may prayer, meditate, fix himself on God, remove himself. Jesus even did that from time to time. He removed himself in times of prayer. And so it is a good, it's a good habit to have that when you're starting to feel out of sorts, when you're agitated, just remove yourself from that setting and for a while. But anyway, so this is Saul, and this is what took place. It says, and Jesse took a donkey laden with bread and a skin of wine, a young goat, and sent them by David to his son Saul. And David came to Saul and entered his servants. And Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. What a position of prominence. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, let David remain in my servants, for he has found favor in my sight. And whenever the harmful spirit from God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it in his hand. So Saul was refreshed, and as well, and the harmful spirit departed from him. So it calmed him, it eased him in a way that he became more like he once was. We'll see as we go on with this changes, and we're out of time, but we'll get into the change. And but before that, one of the great chapters of the Bible, we do it in Bible Booster, 1 Samuel 17. What is it? I do it the other way normally. What's going to happen in 1 Samuel 17? David fights for life. So that's what we'll be into next week. Appreciate y'all being here tonight. Batteries on that one.
I'll check the batteries.
I think it's getting a little,
I know it's one that's kind of compare right here, by the way.
yeah, I think it's getting a little low.
I don't know if that's what it is, no. That's a possibility.
Answer?
Cute little girls all riding scooters.
Happy birthday to Kenneth Westmore. And Jennifer Reed. Is there anything tonight that needs to be Yeah, I got her last week. Rachel. I came in a little bit late. Is there anything that needs to be mentioned? Not aware of?
We didn't mention that one.
Widows sign sheet.
Figure this is the last opportunity.
Yeah, we're gonna collect that up tonight, and, Sunday, after the morning services, at lunchtime, we'll do the, Widows luncheon. Around 12:30, we should be ready for that.
Preacher, not preach.
Pretty long as you want to.
Y'all just gonna be eating at 4:30.
Okay. I've asked, Dale Ashley to wear our opening prayer at the appropriate time, Jared Pryor our closing prayer, Rick Scott will have a few song steps, Jim Bradshaw has the devo. Is there anything else? Let's go ahead and stand and have our opening prayer before the song.
Father, who art in heaven, most thankful for this time to be able to gather together and worship and sing songs and offer prayers. We pray that you be with each and every one of us as we do this. And we pray, Father, that you be with those in the cornfields that are in harm's way. We pray that you watch over them and protect them. Father, we ask that you also be with those that are sick here, that are attending here, that we know of, that need your guidance and blessing. We pray, Father, that you be with us always. In Jesus' name, I pray.
Amen.
Be seated. Let's sing number 827, Sweet Hour of Prayer, 827. Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, that calls me from the world of care, and bids me at my Father's throne, make all my wants and wishes known. In seasons of distress and grief, my soul has often found relief, and darkness gave the tender stare, by thy return, sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, thy wings shall my petition bear, to him whose truth and faithfulness engage the waiting soul to bless. And since he bids me seek his face, believe his word and trust his grace, I rest on him by every care, and wait for thee to 31, that we live close to thee. In thy field I will sickle brave and true, in the fight for the right I would dare and do, spend my days in thy praise all the journey through, let me live close to thee each day. Let me live close to thee, take my hand in thine and guide me on along the rugged way. Attorney mark your books to number 902, nothing but blood, 902.
Good evening. I appreciate that. I appreciate the songs that Rick led there, and you know, it's something about when the song leader wasn't up here, we have to kind of listen to one another, and I think that's a good thing. As the one doing the lesson, though, you don't have that visual cue, though, when that person steps away, so you have to just have to pay attention. So that's good. It's good to be here. A good week all in all. It's been a busy week, although not as tiring as last week was, and so we're thankful for that. Exciting week for, I know, many in town, and I hope the weather cooperates enough where, first of all, people can safely get there and safely get back, and the game can be safely played. You know, we don't realize how spoiled we are, though. I mean, there's people in a lot of places, a lot of communities that have never been to a championship game of any kind, and Boonville seems to have a lot of them. The only place I know around here, though, that's even worse than us, though, is, you know, Greenwood. I don't know how they, you know, they just give them a trophy every year and don't even worry about playing the games, I think, sometimes. But it's a good thing. We, on Sunday nights, those of you that have been here, we do a thing called Bible Booster Class. And in Bible Booster Class, what we, what we tend to do is we say a thing. But for example, guys, I see some of you that come. If I say creation, what do you say?
Genesis 1:1.
Yeah. If I say heaven, what do you say?
Revelations 1.
Okay. Now, and there's a chapter in the Bible, if I were to say lost, anybody know what you would say? He's not here, though. But anyway, if I were to say lost, what chapter in the Bible do you think you would think about? Because there's one chapter that all it deals with is lost things or lost people. And that is Luke 15. So turn to Luke 15. It is a chapter dealing with things or people that are lost. And we're going to look at just the first of them tonight, and the parable of the lost sheep. And you know, these are things that are supposed to make us think about the relationship of those with God, and it culminates, you know, climaxes with the prodigal son, which is the ultimate of something lost, a lost person. And of course, we see things like lost sheep. You know, people do what they can to find a lost sheep, and a lost coin, the ladies would do what they could to find that lost coin, and we understand it and how you would rejoice, and of course, even so much so should be a lost son. But anyway, in verse 3, it says, "So he told them a parable, what man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country, and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, Rejoice with me, for I found my sheep that was lost. Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." These are some fundamental lessons that Jesus was trying to instruct, and he did it through the use of parables. And of course, we see such ways that we can apply this in so many spiritual aspects. But I want to look at some things. I've seen some of you older folks may not understand what I call by this, but I've seen memes on Facebook. It's just these little pictures that have words and, you know, fitting things. And one of these memes I've seen, it says, you know, going after that one sheep that's lost out of 100 doesn't make much sense unless you're that one, does it? If you're that one, you hope someone comes looking after you. But I want us to think and reflect on tonight, something that I know that we're trying to maybe start to make an emphasis on. We're going to try to get some records together and find out, there are so many people that used to be here not that long ago. Even since I've been here, there's people that are no longer come. Of course, we understand some have passed away. Some have gone on to get the reward. Some have moved out of the community. We understand that. But there's some that's still in our community that just no longer can. And I think, looking at it, I guess the last several churches I've been at, that has been the case. Most of the churches that I've come to when I began my ministry there, you can look back in their history and you can find somewhere 5, 10, 15, 20 years past where their numbers were much larger. Now sometimes there's other reasons to explain for that, and I realize that Boonville has at best been stagnant with its population. But there's also a large number of that where we can say that there aren't as many faithful people as there once was. And we look at that and we see this, and yet it seems like what we concentrate most of the time in churches is the folks that are here. We need to have more activities for this group. We need to be doing more with this group. And I'm not saying any of these things are wrong. But think about this. We concentrate so much on the 99. How we can make them happy, how we can please them, how we can instruct them. And yet, how much time do we devote those ones that are gone? Now, I think each of us can be guilty of this from time to time, and we focus on those that we feel like, well, we can have greater impact with them. But here it says quite plainly that the heavens rejoice much greater on just one person who repents than 99 that are still righteous and need no repentance. And so I think maybe at some point we have got things flipped. I'm guilty of this myself, I think at times. And we focus so much on the ones that are already done. And don't get me wrong, once again, we need to do certain things, and we need to make sure that we educate people, and we instruct people, and we keep them, uplifted in a way that, yes, they are doing the best that they can as Christians, but our focus should be on those that are lost, those that have lived. What would we do if we had a child that was in need? All of us probably have done great and marvelous things for children that are hurting, children that are need help. Maybe children that was injured in an accident, and you drove or you did whatever. My dad, one time, my sister turned up missing. We lived out in the country, and there was a long dirt road beside us that went several miles, and she had seen this dog, and she followed the dog down all the way to that road, but we didn't know where she was. So my mom, she was on the phone, she turned her back, and my sister, 2 years old, had gone. We called the police. My dad was at the International Bible College at the time, and in his studies, and they called him there and got him, out of class, and he got in that car. Actually, he had ridden there with another brother that was going to school with him, and one of the instructors one of the professors there, let him have his car. He took his car, and he was driving on the Nancy Straits doing about 100 miles an hour. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Nancy Straits is a federal highway. It has a speed limit of 50 miles an hour. It always has, and probably always will. And needless to say, a state trooper pulled him over. But you know what? He told the state trooper what was going on. The state trooper had heard about it because they had, issued things over the radios, and he said, just slow it down so we'll escort you to your house. Maybe we need to be more like that with those that are lost. And so I have a challenge for you. We all know someone that used to be here that's not here. I want you this very night, before you lay your eyes down your pillow and go to sleep, I want you to pray for someone you know that's no longer faithful. Maybe it's someone in your family. Maybe it's someone that you used to be close to. Maybe it's someone you used to see. Maybe that would, participate in services, maybe lead singing, maybe do this or do that. I want you to pray for them tonight. And I want you to think about what you can do to try to find them, that they may be brought back. And so that's my lesson tonight. Like I say, it's one that I know it doesn't lead to us responding, but I want you to know if you are one of these lost sheep, the Lord values you so much. And heaven itself values you so much that there'd be so much rejoicing if you decided to come back to Him. If you're not a Christian, you're by nature already lost. Your sins have not been washed away. Paul was told, Acts 22:16, now while you're waiting, rise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. Oh, how much rejoicing would be for that. Or maybe you just need help in some other way. Whatever you need, come now. Together we stand and sing.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Nothing can for sin atone. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Not a good that I have done. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know. Nothing but the blood of Jesus.
Now, our Father who art in heaven, we're so thankful, Father, for us to come here again on this Wednesday evening, to come together and worship your holy name. Pray at this time, Father, for the lesson that we did here tonight. Father, that we would think of those that have fallen away from your grace. Pray for those, Father, who have fallen away and that need to come back, Father. And if it's us, that we would spread the word, Father, your word to them. Let their hearts be pricked, Father. Pray it be your will be done. Father, be with those that are sick and in pain, Father, the ones in the household of faith. Ask that you be with them and comfort them in their time of need, whatever it may be that you know about. We're so thankful, Father, for that you kept us safe today for another day, that you would keep us safe on our way home, Father. Be with us, Father, as we do travel back to our houses. Unless, Father, it be thy will that we come back at the next appointed time. Pray that you forgive us of